Welcome to DevOps Accents, a podcast on everything around DevOps, public cloud, and cloud-native topics, with your hosts, Pablo, Leo, and Kirill.
Hello and welcome to 22nd episode of DevOps Accent, a podcast where we, the co-founders of MKDev, get together to discuss all things around DevOps and cloud-native technologies with our multinational accents. And today we have a new guest, our friend and fellow entrepreneur, co-founder and CTO of Semaphore CI, a tool many of you must probably use, Darko Fabijan. Hi, Darko.
Hi, guys. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Pablo, to you too.
Hello, how are you?
Darko, my first question, what is your accent?
I don't know, you will have to tell me. I actually just came back from New York. We were there on a DevOps Con. And as we were, walking around and speaking with multiple people, I was complaining that I can detect many different accents around, but I cannot recognize mine. So I don't know where I put myself. So yeah.
American people have a very thing about accents, and British people as well, and they can easily catch where you're from, which part of the country you came from, and even if you're from Australia or from United Kingdom, which part of United Kingdom. And to me this sounds like crazy, because how they even distinguish one from another. I can understand if the person came from France or from Berlin or from Germany. Yeah, you can hear that, or in my case, Eastern Europe accents.
Yeah,
you can easily catch it.
Yeah, my guess is that I'm in the Eastern European accent group. But again, even to listening to myself, on a podcast or something like that, I have no clue where I would position myself, honestly.
Okay, another colorful accent into our into our group. And before we move on, let's talk a bit about you, Darko, for our listeners to get some context. What you do and why you do this. I mean, one day, 11 years ago, you woke up and decided, I'm gonna make my own CI/CD tool with Blackjack or whatever.
Yeah.
How did you end up being the co-founder of Semaphore in the first place? What's the story?
Yeah, sure. Well, with my friend from university, Marco, we actually discovered Ruby on Rails early on. We were actually studying, both of us, computer hardware at university together, and essentially we figured out we don't want to bury ourselves deep in the hardware, because the freedom was really lacking, especially in Europe when it comes to hardware. If you want to work on it, you have to move around, or be stuck with maybe a single company in your city which does certain type of audio chip or whatever you're specializing in. So we very early on moved away from that to internet, and then we founded a consulting agency in the web space. It was 2008, 2009, and those were the years where a lot of tools were just moved to cloud, to SaaS, SaaS of everything kind of years.
Yeah.
And then we initially tried with some local events, tickets, kind of a SaaS startup, which didn't really work out. And from there we moved into consulting, and then for a couple of years we were working in Ruby on Rails consultants for a number of US tech companies, and we ended up being a consulting agency of maybe around 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
All of us were developers, and as we embraced test-driven development, behavior-driven development, just all of those practices, we needed a CI tool. And we started setting up Jenkins, and we set it up once. It was kind of okay. It's easy to get started. Later, it gets a bit slower, and then we needed to upgrade that, instance and instances and all of that, and reprovision everything and so on. And we figured out that it's just not that level of user experience that we were having with other tools. And the main other tools that we were using at the time were GitHub on one side. We were storing our code. And then on the other side, it was, Heroku or, similar, cloud platforms to deploy the application. And the piece in the middle where you need to run all the tests, run them quickly, don't maintain it too much, and then trigger deployments and all of that was Jenkins, which was a piece of software that was just not comparable with the user experience with these other tools that I mentioned, GitHub on one side and Heroku on other, were giving us. And since we were very deep in that Ruby on Rails community, we figured out that there must be also other people who just want to do click, set up my project, have a CI. Don't worry about it, don't maintain it. If I need 50 instances, to run all my slow UI tests, give me those 50 instances without I going to, Linode and at that time buying 10 more VPC servers, provisioning them, scaling them, all of that. And I think that I pretty much answered the question of how it gets started.
So you discover a problem in Jenkins, and as a consultant, wow, it's super cool. So then you decide we are going to create I had to mind at the beginning a product and later on a company is around the product.
Yeah.
So then you decide to create a company around something that all of us, we have discovered many times, that Jenkins is a super cool tool, All of us, we have used Jenkins many, many times for sure.
Yeah.
But then it has many, many problems, that, and one of them is this user interface moments when you start to hate Jenkins and this language code and this and this, all these barriers and all these problems that you find.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say that none of us in the company were, at that time, I'm not sure where the DevOps term was generally in those days. But
yeah, I don't know either. I don't think so, yeah.
But
because we're talking about 2012, no? 2010, 11?
Well, it was the kind of earlier when we initially started setting it up. It was maybe 2009, 2010, the first time that we set it up.
Yeah.
And one of the things for us was also communicate with the clients. The startups that we were supporting were, usually in the very early days. They have maybe up to 10 employees. And for us, it was like, okay, I'm setting up Jenkins, and this is, third day in a row that I'm, scaling it again and updating the plugins and, all of that, which was not kind of the description of the job that we were doing, And
wow.
we're getting the comments from a client, okay, but, what are you doing third day in a row?
Yeah.
And how long took you the process to create all these tool and start to sell to customers?
Well, I think it was probably somewhere, I would say, close to a year. We had one guy working half-time to create, the very, very, rudimentary initial version where you could connect your GitHub repository to the tool, and run pretty much one job. I mean, one by being one in parallel. There were there was no parallelism in the earliest days. So I would say it's probably, if not a year, probably close to 9 months. After that we launched it. And in terms of SaaS CI/CD tools, we were the first to market, to really support private repositories, which now in hindsight, it was essential for us to, become a viable company. Because we were super early, and we had, a great insight into that Ruby on Rails, community. We know what are the venues to kind of get the word out, and then it was quite quickly that we actually got our first customers. I think it was in the first month or so.
Wow.
In those days that people just connected their credit card and started using the tool. Then it took a while to break even.
I understand that. I know what you
But
mean.
that was maybe in the realm of like year and a half or so. But just for I think 2 people working on the tool, and then we needed I think 3 years to actually break even for the whole company, and then we essentially let go of our consulting clients and focused exclusively on the Semaphore. So yeah.
Was it difficult to switch your own mindset and the mindset of those with whom you've been working with, from giving advices to from consulting people how to do things to actually start doing things and creating a tool, a product? Because it's entirely different products. Like, you have to promote yourself, your knowledge, and your services for as a consultancy for your clients, and then you have to scrap basically all what you did in the past and start anew, promoting and selling a tool, a technological tool. It's an entirely different job. Was it difficult to switch between these two?
I'm not sure that we successfully switched to this day. But the a bit longer answer, I think, would be when we were working with those clients. As I said, it was always a creation of a tool. One of our primary customer was in the realm of like restaurant reservation service, which included, you can reserve your seat at the restaurant, and there was also a credit card processing, for the clients of that tool, and all of that. And since it was a smaller company, we were pretty close to all the, UI, UX elements of it, how it should work. And the registration process is almost like kind of the same as buying like a plane ticket in a way that it's a multi-step process, which, can be tedious for average person and so on. So we were quite versed in that part. A part which is tricky is, marketing and selling.
I can imagine.
Yeah, as I said, we were close to that Ruby on Rails community and, understood that mindset. And what we managed to do very well is that it was possible to get to that aha moment when you register for a tool in under 60 seconds. Because we focused very heavily on that initial experience. You log into a tool with GitHub, and then we list your repositories. You pick your Ruby on Rails projects. Since we were very opinionated at that point in time, you pretty much click next after you pick repository, and in I would say 70% of the cases, you get a green build. Because Ruby on Rails framework, is still very opinionated, and we could, configure database automatically based on your configuration, a number of other things, and get you to a green build. And then after that, it was like connect your credit card. So us as, tech people and geeks and all of that, that's the piece that we managed to, do very well, and also approach Ruby on Rails community as a whole very, very well. After that step, a lot of people were asking for, different technologies and all of that, but that was not that close to us. So let's say we were not, into the Python community or PHP community and Java community and all of those. So I would say to this day, we have managed to penetrate into those communities and all of that to some extent, but never as well as in, Ruby on Rails community. And from that moment on, it was mainly the growth that we managed to generate to writing, technical articles, and just approaching developers, through that channel. In terms of really, having a company which is, super sales driven, top down, and all that approach, I still that we haven't mastered that. And it's also we are trying, and doing steps in that realm, especially now that we are focusing with bigger customers with our tool. But it is a challenging discipline on its own.
Yeah, I can understand, and this sounds so much familiar to us, to what we are doing, because even MK Dev started as a training company. We provided mentorship services, and we started with Ruby on Rails community as well, the Ruby community, and the most of our clients came from Ruby community, and we was most like familiar with that, and then we started to expanding to other programming languages, and from there we switched to consultancy and whatever. And I remember back then when we've been doing these, we've published articles, and we have our mentors who've been discussing this. And I remember no one really knew the concept of CI/CD back then, and our mentors with whom we've been working, they had to explain it to the general audience through their articles, and that when it started to emerge, I remember, but at the same time, it was more of a cultural thing than a skill.
Yeah.
But now, in the modern world, without CI/CD, it is hard to imagine the development process at all, and work of any decent application or web or mobile service. Like, it's become a necessity, more or less, from how I perceive it. However, when I look through the job descriptions, when we need something like that, I consistently find a requirement to know CI/CD. And this makes me think, because from my point of view, it's just as strange as a requirement of a computer skill, for example, to a marketer. Like, yes, a marketer should know how to use a computer, right? But why should this requirement be written in vacancies if it's obvious, right? And the same thing with CI/CD, like, it's a bare minimum. Hence the question, why nowadays do we still have to convince people that CI/CD is a necessity?
Well, I think it's we have our own, view of the world based on what we have seen, and the communities that we are generally, swimming in.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that there is probably definitely more than 50% of the code that is written today is not covered by automated tests.
Mm-hmm.
And generally the people who are writing that code then also don't have exposure to CI and CD and all of that.
How come?
From that's not our target market, but since we launched also the on-prem version of Semaphore, you can run everything, behind your firewall and all of that we kind of opened for ourselves a part of the market which just wouldn't run stuff in the cloud,
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine those, traditional companies, in manufacturing, maybe in retail, maybe, definitely, pharmaceutical or, those areas where there is just a lot of legacy work being done in a very old and legacy way. And essentially how some of those companies are approaching us is, okay, they heard about this, CI and CD, and they have actually a couple of hundred of engineers, writing some code, but they are not using those practices. And for instance, they would like us to help them with that. The reality is that if they are really in that realm where their developers are not really writing automated tests, but they have a QA team of 50 people testing their banking app, then we don't have capacity to educate all those people, introduce those practices within their organization.
Mm-hmm.
We are there to help them improve their CI and CD practices if they maybe are lacking in those areas, and then help them through our tool also. but doing that part of education of like, preaching why you should write automated tests and why that's better than.
So basically you are telling me that so the way how I imagine how the development works is basically the ideal world, and it's not like this in the reality, because I imagine that everyone does it.
Yes.
Testing your own code to me is a bare minimum. Like I thought everyone does it, and now you tell me that like 50% of the code is not covered with automated tests. And
at least that's absolute minimum.
And even more, So,
Yeah, I think it's much more.
Yes.
I mean, what we, to describe a bit our customer base, or let's say a vast majority of our customer base. Vast majority of our customer base are, super technically mature, usually product companies that really appreciate, super fast feedback loops, meaning developer makes a change, pushes the code, top 10 minutes later, they get the feedback, is it red or green? And then if everything is green, in a lot of cases, they would even automatically, kick off a promotion that would, deploy their code into the production. And that is true for. So point being, we are also in that, a bubble, to say. That I also cannot imagine how someone is living a different life than what 90% of our customers are doing, and just moving fast. But the reality is there are actually a lot of companies in billions of dollars of revenue, who are creating various internal software for various things that are not even covered with any of the tests, and are just being tested manually.
I was thinking about when I was looking through those vacancies, so job description requiring CI/CD. To me, maybe it's like a way to send a message, like even if the candidate does know and understand what CI/CD is, but they must be prepared to work in under a high demand for quality and speed of development. Like that's the kind of message that you send by stating that the CI/CD is a requirement for the position. So it's basically a requirement is a kind of a filter or survival test for potential employees. I think this is a rather cynical theory, but perhaps there is some truth in it. Do you agree with this, that working in this kind of environment could be stressful, like when you have to constantly check on your code and to test it quickly? I know so, and this might affect the way how you work. I mean, on mental side.
Well, there are many patterns that exist around that, but I would maybe touch upon the first one, which CI/CD is solving. So if you don't have automated test suite and then CI in place, what you're probably facing is that you are writing your code for a release that is going to happen maybe on January 15th. And you are now adding a lot of code, which is going to be tested next week, let's say by the QA team. You have a slow feedback loop if it's working or not. And what you're essentially doing, you're working toward a big bang event. Mm-hmm. And that big bang event is going to happen on, let's say, January 15th, when we are going to introduce a new version of maybe, whatever application in some retail or whatever. What will you have then is that maybe a couple of weeks prior to that big release, everyone will be under a significant amount of stress because things will be, things are just, in a breaking stage. You have introduced a lot of changes that you are going to ship at once. And then when the day for release comes, another element will be in play that, we haven't released in a couple of months, or let's say 3 months. And then it's going to be a big event. That deployment is going to be a big event, and it should be totally non-event. What will happen afterwards, because we couldn't just satisfy that, high quality standards that everything is just working for the next couple of weeks, then we'll have, a lot of bug fixes that we will be shipping. And essentially we would have, let's say, a 2 months of very stressful time for the whole team, instead of having a tiny bit of stress, let's say, every day. So it will just, maybe as you are, studying at the university and you have a big exam. So first 2 weeks you are partying, you're not really, studying anything. And then, with the deadline approach, you're really into, a huge drama mode. So on the other hand, what is the promise of the CI? Is that you integrate into your main master branch on daily basis. You are merging in all the time, making sure that everything is, still green, the smallest changes possible. And ideally, you are also deploying to production on daily level, those changes.
The cloud tech industry is evolving so fast. Do you keep up with it by improving your skills or upskilling your team? At MKDev, we offer a variety of workshops for just that, from the basics to expert knowledge. Before delivering our workshops and training sessions, we carry out a detailed assessment of each participant. To make sure the workshop is helpful for you and your team, we will add more content to it or throw out what you already know. Or we create a custom workshop specifically for the needs of your team and the specifics of your project.
But we need to differentiate here between CI and between CD. For the people that doesn't know, CD or delivery or deployment depends in the way that you want to do, and CI in the way that you integrate, to do the continuous integration of the...
That's probably too late in the process, but CI stands for continuous integration, CD stands for continuous delivery.
The point, Darko, here, the question for you is, I had to mind that most of the companies are doing CI. And even I had to imagine that the name of the company comes, Semaphore CI, comes because the initial idea has to be a CI tool.
Yeah.
So, every time that you push the code, I'm going to get the code, I'm going to execute the test. And then after that, what you were telling before, I have my release and I don't know what I'm going to do with my release, because I had to imagine that 12 years ago, nobody was talking about microservices. I didn't go to GitOps. I didn't go to any of the concepts that are in the market since many years, but now people try to implement, or it seems 5-6 years try to implement, and fail many times. Most that they are able to achieve this, and not because the CI tools, because of the complexity of the tooling. But my point is, how many companies ended in that CI? Because CI is, let's say, the simple part, but CD, delivery or deployment, or deployment and delivery, it depends of how far away you want to go.
Yeah.
It's not so simple, and this concept that all of us, we read about that, all of us, we talk about that in conference, all of us, we say that, is you click the button, you make a change, you click the button, automatically there is a chain, a minimal chain. This example is, I think, is a fantastic example that you gave. Do you want to study the day of the exam, or do you want to study during the 3 months? If you study during the 3 months, you do it little changes in your code. Then as soon as you have a problem, you can discover the problem. But how many companies in your pipeline are doing this CI plus CD completely end to end? So because I saw in my career few companies doing the pure, this one that you read in the books, that I have a chain, I click, and automatically in 35 seconds it's in production, or in 3 minutes and a half, or in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Really, I can tell you that one. I only see that ever in my life.
Well, I would say that majority of our customers live that life.
End to end.
Of like end-to-end deploying into production.
Wow.
A bit more on them. So they're usually US based Series A, Series B, startups, which are everyone is in a tough market, and have to move very fast because they all have a lot of competitors, and someone else is going to run them over.
Yeah.
If they are not employing those practices. Some stories that are happening. Let's say there is a 5-people startup and they are doing CI, and doing also, to some extent, continuous delivery. But maybe they wait for their test to complete, like 30 minutes because they haven't invested much in that. And then there is maybe a deployment phase where they, do it maybe every third day or, every second day they do a release. So there are also such, people that are in that stage. What I have witnessed multiple times in those situations that... and you can be successful also with that approach. I mean, if you have a killer tool and you have discovered your niche and all of that, you don't have to deploy in 30 seconds. You can be successful even with that approach. But then usually what happens is that, investors or management of the company requires that they really, polish their process to the max. And then they throw a new CTO, a new director of engineering, VP of engineering, at us and say, okay, we want you guys to help, our tech guys have a feedback loop, which is, under 5 minutes for our CI pipeline. And then we want, a deployment after that to also take, let's say, under five minutes.
Cool.
And, those requirements are in place. There is, a relatively limited set of things that we can do, by ourselves, but we can help them achieve that. So that's how it's usually the process how people level up. It's just that from your, executive team, you get those requirements because, developers are super expensive. Our competition is also, working, hard and fast, and we want to be the winners. I can then explain what usually happens is that, it will be very hard. It's almost impossible how we are going to, shorten our CI pipeline from, 30 minutes to 5 minutes and all of that. But, it's doable in kind of 99% of the cases. We start the process of breaking down what are the biggest bottlenecks in the pipeline, and just writing them down and then eliminating them one by one. Generally managing and installing all the dependencies is one of the first things that, we help customers to shave off. Then, there are, various caching strategies that can be applied, to speed things up. Then we come to, okay, what's the duration of your test unit or unit tests suite?
Yep.
And then we see what can be done there to shorten that. As you guys know, it usually falls in that realm. So either we are going to scale it vertically, and use a bigger machine for something like that, or we are going to scale it horizontally and split across, multiple instances. Mm-hmm. And unit tests are usually, if they're well written, they're usually fast. Then usually after that comes the harder part of, integration tests and, UI tests and all those end-to-end tests that tend to be heavy. And then there is, again, the same game there. What can be cached, how it can be broken down, how can we parallelize that. And it's a process that, for a bigger project can, easily take 2-3 months to get there. In some cases even longer. If there is, a complex application with, some tests that are just written in such a way that takes 7 minutes to complete because they have just crammed a lot of things, in one test case. And then those test cases have to be broken down into smaller chunks. And there are different, technical challenges along the way for sure. But it's, in vast majority of cases, it's achievable.
No, it's achievable, but the problem is, the reality. It's okay what you mean. You have a company, a new company, and as you mean this type A or B, that that you need to be founded by a VC and you need to get money, because this is the point, no? I'm going to create a company because I need to sell the company, because this is some companies in California are created for that. I am not creating anything that is giving value to me or to my community or to my workers. I creating something that I waiting for a VC to invest in me, in my company, get money. Boom, 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 see you. Venture capital, I love you, give me the money, see you. And then in these cases, I get the point. But imagine all German company, 35,000 workers or employees, I don't know how to say properly, sorry for that. Process that are doing, imagine, I don't know, I don't want to say in a specific customer, but whatever software that is, it was 25 years ago, it was a monolithic, and then we chunk in different modules, and now it's not a monolithic, but then it's impossible, So these cases, it's impossible. So it's a fantastic.
That's true. Yeah, there has to be a huge incentive, and also it has to be pushed hard from the leadership of the company.
Yes.
To invest in that heavily. Yeah, exactly. I completely understand, and that's probably one of the reasons that we don't have many customers from Germany.
But I remember personally,
or from those traditional companies.
I remember personally an American company with headquarters in California that I was working there, and the CTO 4 years ago, he decided and says, "We are going to move everything to microservices." So. That's all. In 6 months, everything is to be microservices. And it's something like, I understand that you want to have every new greenfield is going to be a microservice with a complete CI/CD pipeline. No, but you have applications that are here in this all American 100 years company, maybe 30 years. And you cannot destroy from scratch everything that is giving to you the revenue, because we need to understand that at the end, these kind of non-software companies that use the software to be able to get more, to improve the company, to get better revenues. It's not a company that is selling a software.
Yeah, clear.
So then these companies cannot stop the software, cannot stop the application, because if you stop the application, you don't make money. And you cannot tell, let's start from scratch, no?
Yeah, they shouldn't stop it. But I would say is it worth to them, to speed up that development cycle and the feedback loop that they're going to provide to their engineers.
Yeah.
So the question is, you would have to get the buy-in from the leadership. And let's say our pipeline today takes, 3 hours to run all the tests. And the deployment process maybe takes, maybe it's like a complicated multi-step process, which is, very far from trivial and is a multi-hour process, let's say. And then, there is a chart created within the company. What's the feedback loop once we make a change in our software? How fast can we know, is it working or not? Maybe it also includes like manual testing, which is completely fine. But then we say it's one of our KPIs.
Yeah.
And we are going to work on that KPI. Let's say our goal is 30 minutes from 3 hours. It's achievable. The question is how long it would take, to get there. And the same for the deployment process. But it really has to come from that. You need to have a buy-in from the leadership and a budget to work on that. With today's, salaries of software developers, it's kind of not that hard to make, economic case why it's important to have a fast feedback loop for your developers, and how that feedback loop is going to speed up all that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The one of the things is, who is going to be that, guy or a girl who is going to go into such a traditional company and say, I'm going to put this, huge burden on my back to, ask for money from my leadership, ask, in the investment, because I need, these 2 DevOps guys and these 2 developers working for next couple of months, maybe even years, to, ramp up the speed of that pipeline. Because as you said, it can be in the area of, let's say, manufacturing, and making, shipping software fast is not their core competence, and not the core value. And that transformation can be, it's achievable, can be hard. I think that it's more in the realm of like culture and, social aspects, how to achieve that. One of the things that I have heard is that it's not that hard to make, that economic case to get the investment from the leadership to speed up those pipelines and all of that. But what you also have is a group of maybe, I don't know, let's just say 50 engineers who are working in this company for many, many years in the way that they are used to working. And now you are coming in, let's say, if you are coming from outside and not from the inside, and you are saying, no, I'm going to change the culture of all of you guys.
Yes.
And you are going to be writing your own tests, and you will be integrating, on daily level. And someone is used to, creating a branch and then working on a feature for 2 months, and then merging that feature into the main app and deploying. And as you can imagine, putting yourselves in the shoes of someone who wants to have that, what they say, like, a digital transformation. That's an awful term. That's being
a complete transformation, yes, because it's not.
Yeah. And you are going to go in and you are going to transform the culture of like whole organization. Like, good luck, It's a huge undertaking.
No, yes, because a simple chain of version in many cases, a version imagine from, I telling you, from OpenShift 3 to 4 is a huge chain. Simple changes could be for a company years of work on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
These huge changes could make that the CTO after 1 year, because at the end it's something that many CTOs, they don't want to take the decision, neither the CEOs, because everything depends on that, because now you need to put all the company doing that. And if you are not doing properly because the people is not doing properly, at the end you need to resign and you need to say, sorry, I'm leaving.
Yeah, it's maybe it's not a fair comparison, but it's kind of with the governments, with their, 4-year terms or 5-year terms, whatever is that,
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to come in and solve, the big issues.
Yes.
Like debt or something else in the realm of education, which is, I often hear that, whichever new government comes in, no one wants to really, touch the education and do something there, because it's at least 10-year process.
Yeah.
And they're going to reap any rewards in their term, but the rewards are going to be, for the next government that comes in. So it's also like that, as you said, for a CTO or CEO or anyone else, when it's a multi-year process, the rewards are going to come, but at a much later stage. And in the short term, you might even slow down the pace of development, because you're going to be making changes. But I think that it's very interesting how we have this, almost like a clash of the worlds, where I'm describing, what is truly our, ideal customer, someone who already recognizes that they need, a feedback loop under 5 minutes, and they want to invest because they want to sell their company, in 5 years.
Yes.
And they need to work very fast, or someone else who is having a faster feedback loop is going to run over them. And with these traditional companies of like tens of thousands of people, and all of that,
Exactly.
That is a completely different world.
Yes, because one is do fast because I want to increase my my value. I want to be sold by 2,000 millions, 2 billion, 3 trillion. And the other one is,
In a short amount of time.
Yes, in short amount of time.
I want to
exactly.
become rich tomorrow.
Yes, and the other one is I'm going to be here for the next 100 years. So I want to do something that the next 100 years is still working, or at least something that for 10 or 15 years is still working. So it's completely mentality changes.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the big things in those huge companies is that they want to minimize the risk, and one of the ways to minimize the risk and to minimize the amount of change that we are introducing in our organization. And us coming in and saying, okay, we want your complete continuous delivery continuous deployment pipeline, let's say, to be under 20 minutes. That would need to introduce a lot of changes in the way things are done, technically and organizationally, and that would introduce risk.
And no one wants changes.
And who is going to undertake that risk? Who is that CTO that want to undertake that risk? I mean, there are those people in the world, but I would say not many who want to really do that.
But in the end, this promise of reducing the feedback loop to under 5 minutes, is it even achievable? And if so, is it achievable for certain teams of a certain size who works on a certain kind of products, or it's achievable for anyone?
Well, again, I have to preface my answer with that we also live in a bubble that I have described,
Yes.
All the applications that I have seen, it's achievable. I mean, the ones that I know are from roughly 20 years old. Apps in the realm of insurance and retail. Imagine Java app that starting being developed in 1999. And for such applications, even if they are huge monolithic applications, 200-300 developers working on that application, it is achievable to get that CI feedback loop of under 10 minutes in the particular case that I'm speaking about. I can say that it's I think 75 beefy, bare metal machines running unit tests, and around 100 machines in parallel running their integrations and end-to-end tests, and they get their CI feedback loop in under 10 minutes. The cost of that CI pipeline is significant. It's in the realm of $10+ for a single run of that pipeline to get that feedback loop. So for that part, based on what I have seen, it's achievable. I guess there are industries and types of application that you cannot go that aggressive, of really, where it's not that easy to parallelize all the work in such a way that you can achieve that very fast CI feedback loops. I have to say, for that application that I was describing, a realm which is hard is CD part, because imagine you have that company literally has on close to 300 engineers, and it's a monolithic application, and you can imagine a lot of people want to deploy on that same day, and they do deploy to production. I would say in the realm of dozens of changes in a day. But what they had to implement is that release train, which is going out, I think in their case 5 or 6 times per day. So the first one is going out at 10 a.m. and if you have merged your changes before 10 a.m. and also that merging process is a relatively complex process, Then there is going to be a release, which is going out to production, and it's carrying out changes from multiple teams throughout the organization. And they really, you have those, let's say, 5 chances throughout the day. So on every full hour, a release train going out, and you do have to wait for an hour once you decide that you want to ship your change to the moment that change is going to be shipped. But that's, let's say, maybe not the biggest problem, but you have to work in such a way that if you need to ship a hotfix after that, then you cannot ship that hotfix, that easily. They have, some shortcuts, how to push it into production, quicker. But if it's not really something super critical, then you have to wait for another hour for the next, release train, which will be going out to ship those changes. Which actually brings me to the area of microservices. I would say that all that modularity that you get with microservices can be also achieved with a monolithic application. If you have enough, discipline and good architecture. But what you do get with microservices is that you can independently ship, a change to your part of the system with a completely independent, delivery pipeline. And then you can get also that you can ship a change in under 5 minutes with microservices approach. With monolithic approach, I don't think that it can be really easily achieved, that you can completely independently ship your change. And so we touched upon that topic of monoliths and microservices and all of that. But yeah, I don't know if you guys have any comments or thoughts of what you have seen.
Yeah, the way how I imagine a traditional feedback loop is your development team produces a piece of, let's say, code, and then it delivers it to the operation team. So the operation team then tests it, the software, and finds some errors in the code, and the development team must fix it and improve the functionality. And this feedback loops back to the development team that implements the changes, and it's rinse and repeat. Now, when we use CI/CD tools, we automate some part of it to some extent, and then we are ready to push it to production. And this is where CD comes into play. And when we try to automate most of the process, and when we try to reduce the feedback loop to 5 minutes or less, to 10 minutes. Does it mean that by doing so, especially when it comes to delivery, continuous delivery, does it mean that we effectively eliminating operations from the process? Because in the ideal world, when you continue the development of the product that you are developing, the Semaphore CI, you will try to offer to your clients more and more automation, more and more reduction of time and cost that they spend on this moment between development and delivery. Does it mean that what you are doing is basically you are eliminating ops from DevOps?
Yes, that would mean that, I would say. But ops does find their way in a different team. I mean, how it usually works for us, that for those, bigger clients that I was describing, on the other side is not, let's say, a DevOps or operations team, or, whatever naming we want to put in place, but is a developer productivity team or developer experience team. And that team is usually comprised of, DevOps and development people. And their goal is to provide to their development team, Imagine that team that I was describing of like 300 folks. Super fast CI and CD pipeline. So what they must do, they must maintain, a tool such as, Semaphore CI or like any other CI and CD tool to make sure that that feedback loop in the CI part of the process is maintained and polished. So there are, all dependencies have to be, thought through, very carefully, and, approaches to testing and just installing the app and booting the app and migrating the database. All that has to be super polished to get that fast feedback in the CI part of the loop. And then the deployment part is the other part where they have to think through all of the strategies and approaches, how to kind of eliminate themselves from the equation. And when the build is green on main branch, the next thing which is going to kick in is that automatic deployment into production, which is going to deploy the code into production. And then that ops team, the DevOps team, has to also make sure that, for instance, observability and monitoring and alerting and all the other parts of the application are at the highest possible level, because developers are just going to aggressively be pushing things out and they will be breaking stuff. And then in literally seconds...
This sounds like a suicide for any project to me.
Can you repeat, please?
I said that this sounds, that what you said, this sounds like a suicide for any project. Like, if the developers we're having all this tool, they start pushing, they will break everything eventually.
Not everything,
in my opinion.
But that's where the that operation team comes into play. They must have so many guardrails in place. Mm-hmm. And rollback mechanisms and monitoring and all of that to quickly, revert the changes, and catch the problems as soon as possible in production. Mm-hmm. So I remember from actually a couple of years ago, some example that I heard that I liked very much. It's just a typical, e-commerce application where they have, many, financial transactions in a minute happening, and their top level, KPI for their whole infrastructure was how many transactions per minute were happening. And if they deploy code into production, no one cares about the memory pressure, on their Kubernetes cluster and the CPU pressure and, this and that. But it's that number of operations, number of, orders that they have. And if that goes down, then they have to, revert super quickly, because it means someone broke something, in the production. And then, as I was saying, all that operations power is directed towards making sure that we are safe, that the system is safe. Mm-hmm. So if we would start from this side, so all the, observability, traceability, logging, monitoring, all of that on a very high level in their environments, ideally, gradual rollouts, Canary deployments, feature flags, all the features, mm-hmm. in that area that can really, make the system still safe, even if developers are, pushing the changes so frequently. And then that CI and CD pipelines that also needs a lot of care and maintenance to keep operating like that, because it needs a constant care and maintenance to be operating.
And Darko, before we ended, you were talking now about the Canary deployments, and I was remember when a Spinnaker appeared, and it was Netflix, no, who made the Spinnaker,
yes.
no?
Yes.
I remember it was a presentation that I went many years ago, and it was something fantastic, no? Because these Canary deployments, the idea more or less is It's like, okay, it's an old concept of what happened in the mines. That, you go to the mine and you introduce a bear. If the bear is dead, then run away because you're going to die too. So then the idea is, I have imagined a deployment in mind that we were talking about Kubernetes, but it was the beginning of Kubernetes. No, I deploy an application, but you can do without Kubernetes. You can do many ways. Okay, but only to simplify to people how it is today, you start an application, and for example, you can start a different deployment where you start a pod or 2 or 3 pods, and then depends on what happened there. It's like a A/B test, you can say, too, in this way, different in front end. But okay, it's something, okay, if it's running, then I can start adding more and more pods in this deployment, and the old one is going to be
the traffic, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. But okay, all these themes when appeared, it was the people who was, wow, fantastic. But my question is simple, and before we end it, so, what is the future of the CI/CD pipeline? What is the future of all this tooling? Because better than you, nobody can tell you. You know how hard is the competence these days. You know how many companies are in this atmosphere that appear and disappear. Not like Semaphore, because we're talking about one of the oldest ones that we have in the market. But GitOps appear like something. But okay, GitOps at the end is a concept. And it's a concept of what it was before that now is implemented. Because it's not a rule changing. We have, for example, Tekton, but Tekton, nobody want to use Tekton anymore because the people said, what is that? It's the more complex thing ever in the world. Yeah. We have many other toolings that are doing only now CI or doing CD, like Argo CD, for example. That you are inside of this environment, what do you think that is going to happen in the next 3, 4, 5 years? I'm not telling 20. I'm telling only 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Well, I'm going to use Spinnaker as an example of that.
Okay.
I mean, as it's in our realm where it started gaining traction, we looked into it. What is it doing? How is it operating? And all of that. One of the huge problems back then, and I haven't checked it recently, but I think it's still the case. It's super complex to operate. Just to install it and run it. I remember that they needed like maybe 8 or 10 services independently that you must, spin up, and you need, I don't know, Kafka and this and that, and I don't remember what are all the requirements. And then when you get in there, then it's also quite hard to configure. I remember when I was checking it out, it was only supporting EC2 instances, and they were, doing that, Canary with EC2 instances and all of that. And the thing is that I think that there were very few companies in the world that have resources to support Spinnaker, in production and educate the people. I might be wrong. Maybe they have,
No, it's few companies
made some things easier. So I would, in my view, the main thing that is needed is simplification and allowing people to be able to achieve things easier with tools, such as Semaphore, any other CI/CD tools, because the complexity is always rising. And for me, as I was describing this example of CI and CD, but then in production you need all that monitoring and tracing and alerting and all of those things. The problem is that, average companies and average teams just don't have enough, money, if nothing else, to be able to support these complex workflows. So a piece that Semaphore brought is it eliminated, let's say, the maintenance of the Jenkins instance, and it made that piece, cheaper. What is still to be done is to simplify all these, more advanced ways of deploying and releasing application and monitoring them and configuring pipelines and all of that. So I would say that the main thing that we and our industry can bring to, development and ops world is the simplicity, simpler tools that are easier to use, easier for people to onboard. I mean, all of us are unfortunately quite, quite old by now, and we have all, a decade or 2 decades of experience. But can you imagine someone entering, domain of like DevOps and, development, 1 year ago? And there are all these things that we are talking about. There are just so many things.
Yeah.
Can you guys give me, a playbook with, 2 or 3 tools that I need to learn? I'm covered end to end.
Yeah, this could be fantastic at this point. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
3 tools and that's all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm all for simplification.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, that was very interesting. I still have so many questions to you, Darko, especially about the future. Like, I don't know, like, if you're even thinking about integrating artificial intelligence into your testing processes. No need to answer. We don't have time for that. Let's postpone it for another time.
Sure.
if this will happen.
If you want some millions, yes, why not? The capital is going to increase if you say AI 20 times.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today, Darko. Thank you for answering such questions. That was very interesting.
Thank you, guys. It was great seeing you guys again.
I hope those who are listening to us learned something new today. If you have questions, feel free to ask and feel free to reply to our bi-weekly newsletter on KDev Dispatch. Go and subscribe. If you have questions, just hit the reply button and we read everything you write to us. Or you can leave your comments, questions directly into comments. And if this is not the first time you are listening to our podcast episode, and if you learned something new, consider subscribing and don't forget to give us likes. We like likes. So then again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to us. That's basically it. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you think your project infrastructure is well set and maintained? We know for sure there is always room for improvement. If you are uncertain where to begin, let's first do an audit of what you already have. We will review your setup from every angle: performance, cost, security, high availability, and automation, and provide you with a detailed roadmap of which direction your infrastructure should go, generate concrete tasks for you to implement, or even take on your infra entirely, if you let us, of course. Of course.